Provide or survive. This is the reality that most Christian men face today. We have been convinced by the enemy that God cannot give us both the wealth that we desire and the health required to sustain it long term. We've been told that we have to choose between financial success and stewarding our body. And that is a lie. Now, the solution is much, much deeper than a brand new diet and a brand new workout. It's at a spiritual level. It lies in your identity in Christ. So if you want to fix this problem for good, you do not need a new diet. You do not need a new workout. You need a new identity. Now, if you don't know me, my name is Joey Joheim. I own a company called Default Kings. We help Christian men who are primarily business owners and executives who have been successful in their career but dropped the ball in their health, overcome these deep spiritual struggles that have led to gluttony and sloth, which ultimately has caused poor health, obesity, diabetes, etc. Now, personally, this is something that me, even as somebody who literally owns a health and fitness coaching company, struggles with daily because I do identify as a provider. I do want to give my family an amazing life here on earth. And oftentimes, one of the first things that can get put on the back burner, again, even for myself personally, sitting in the seat that I sit in with my career of choice, sometimes you can put the workout to the back burner. Sometimes you can skip the food prep and the meal planning. Sometimes you can skip your time in the Word and just get right to the desk, right to the laptop, and start doing what you do at a financial provision level. And it has to be reversed. So in this video, my plan is to give you a full-blown strategy that goes, again, much deeper than just fitness tactics. We could do that all day, but we need to get to the core of what's happening spiritually, or else your behavior will not change long-term, meaning your results will not stick long-term either. So let's get into it. And just real quick, a little disclaimer of sorts. While I am formally educated in exercise science, nutrition, even psychology, I am not and never ever claimed to be a pastor or a Bible expert or a theologian. Quite frankly, I'm just a guy who loves Jesus. And a lot of what we apply in our teachings scripturally and using biblical principles with our clients is from our own time in the Word and from seeing how these principles that we find in the Bible applied practically to real human beings shake out over time. So I'm always open to discourse and conversation. If you want to leave questions or concerns in the comments, I'm happy to go back and forth. You can message me on any of the social platforms on any of these like theological or biblical topics. Because again, I don't claim to be an expert on the Bible, but I do love Jesus. I do pursue him with my heart fully, and I do believe that there's a ton of gems in the Word that can help somebody transform their body and their health and even break generational curses on that front. So let's get into the video. Brought my laptop with me and my trusty new iPad that I don't have a pencil for, so I'm going to be drawing with my finger in a little bit here. But you didn't come for my artistic nature. You came for the Word and fixing the health. So first and foremost, I really want to bring up how this idea came to fruition. I was on a call about a week ago with one of our clients, just recently started. We'll call him John just for privacy's sake. And he came into the program. He's sitting around like 380, 390 pounds. And he's about a week or so in, and he's really struggling. He's really struggling to get the ball rolling. And he was transparent about that on a coaching call in front of the entire community. And really, it's gotten to the point where it's very serious for him. He's almost 50 years old. He's had doctors tell him that they're concerned. He's having AFib. They're genuinely worried about whether or not he will be here if he stays where he's at. And this is a very serious situation. And this is, of course, like a logical extreme of poor choices in somebody's health over time, where you get to the point where you're almost 400 pounds. I'm going to assume safely that not everybody watching this video is to that point, but it is a logical extreme, which is why I'm using it for this video. Because the rationale that he provided me in this setting was the thing that was holding him back from blocking off time to do what he needed to do to steward his health and to execute the plan that we provided him was because he was focused on effectively running his business, making money for his wife, for his family, which is, again, obviously important. The Word tells us that somebody who does not provide for their family is worse than an unbeliever. So obviously you do need to do that, but it's not the only thing that you need to do. And I had to have a very serious conversation with him about the fact that if he's not alive, he can't do that. So if you're going to provide and you're going to prioritize your finances and you're going to prioritize material well-being from a wealth perspective, you have to physically be here. And if you're not, it's not going to matter. And so this is obviously a very harsh conversation, right? But it is a very real reality if we do not also steward the body that God loaned us. Okay. Now, this is a guy who also, and I believe him when he tells me this, like he swears up and down he knows all the fitness tactics. He's done every program in the world. He knows all the stuff. And quite frankly, that's not an uncommon scenario. It's relatively simple with some basic research to figure out how we need to get the fat off. It's not rocket science at that level. So when he tells me, Joey, I know all the tactics, I know all the stuff, I do believe him. And quite frankly, I've seen this in my own life with my father. He's a physical therapist, like on paper, more qualified than me to do what I do, right? But for nearly 2 decades, he was 60 pounds overweight. So the problem was clearly not knowledge. The problem was application. It was taking action. And those actions that are being taken stem from identities that are held, which, again, we're going to get into in a second. I'll use some drawings here to illustrate this for you. And so we can give somebody this exactly perfect scientific, nutrition plan, training plan, and all the bells and whistles on it, and an amazing staff to provide accountability. But at the end of the day, you can load the bases, but the client has to hit the ball, right? In order for them to hit the ball, that is an action. That is a behavior. That is something that has to take place. And the only way you're going to get that to take place is by having your identity in the right place. So what started as like a tactical conversation with this client turned into a deep spiritual conversation about what it is that he believes about himself and what it is that he needs to do as a man and how that's impacting his behavior. So that's kind of the context and really the motivation or the inspiration for this topic in this video today. And the first thing that I want to cover is really what I broke down for him. And it's essentially how we use what we call our default actions framework. Your default actions being the subconscious habits that you take, the things that you do without thinking twice about it. Classic example is brushing your teeth. When you were a kid, your mom or your dad probably had to remind you to do that. But now as a grown man watching this video, I hope your mom and your dad don't have to call you to remind you to brush your teeth every single day, right? It's a subconscious habit ingrained at a deep level. You don't even think twice about it. So we have to fix those, right? Once we fix those, the outcomes that you're after get a whole lot easier. So how do you fix those? Well, the easiest way to think about this is to draw it out as a tree. And I believe I got this tree, I think it was from Myron Golden. Maybe it was somebody else. There's probably done a ton of people in the kind of like Christian content world that have maybe used this example, but I'm going to use it too. So I don't claim to be the inventor of this, but I'm absolutely going to use it because it's helped me, it's helped our clients, and I want to share it with you. So first and foremost, you have to think about what the word says. The word says you will know them by their fruits. So let's just draw out a tree here. Okay. At the top of the tree, you kind of have the branches, and then in there you have the fruits. Okay. This is what you have. I have. You have fruits. Okay. Now, a good tree produces good fruits. A rotten tree produces rotten fruits. So in this drawing here, where you have this, bright, green, nice leaves, red fruits. These are good fruits. An example of this practically in your health would be, hey, you're below a 25 BMI, acceptable healthy body weight. Maybe you're 15% body fat, very lean. You probably have like bicep veins and abs. These are like very good, tangible fruits in your health, okay? That would be good fruits. Now, in order to get those good fruits, you have to do the things that lead to those fruits. So you don't get abs and you don't get to 15% body fat by eating, 8,000 calories a day and not working out. This is not how it happens, right? If you do those things, you will have rotten fruits. If you sit on the couch and eat 8,000 calories a day, you're not going to have abs. It's just not going to work practically. So the next phase in this is what you do. I'll give you a cool color here. This looks close enough to brown to me. So you have like the stump or the branches, whatever you want to call this. I'm not a biologist or whatever the title would be for such a thing. You have like the base of the tree. Okay, you get the picture. This is what you do. Okay, so again, your actions lead to your outcomes. Okay, what you're doing from the tree perspective is going to lead to the fruits. Okay, now below that is where you get to your identity. Right, I am, because that is what causes your behavior. It is your identities, right, or your identity that you hold that influences your thoughts, it influences your beliefs, and those are what ultimately drive your behaviors. Very tangible example of this is like if you believe that you have the fat gene, which is a big belief that a lot of people have, they think it's a real thing. It's not, it's propaganda. Okay. They believe they have the fat gene. So therefore, what do? Well, they sit on the couch, they don't work out, they don't track their food, they don't weigh themselves because they just hold this belief, they hold this identity. I am fat, I have the fat gene, I'm big boned, it's just who I am. So their behavior aligns with that, and they do nothing that would lead to them otherwise being in shape. So I believe I have the fat gene, right? So I do the stuff that fat people do, and therefore I actually stay fat, right? It just goes right up the chain, okay? Now, the good news is you can reverse this, right? Imagine you start to hold the belief, right, that I am somebody who stewards the body that God gave me. Well, what would your behavior likely turn into then? Well, I am somebody who stewards the body that God gave me. So what am I going to do to steward my body? Well, maybe I'm going to start lifting weights. I'm going to start getting more steps. I'm going to start tracking my food. I'm going to start getting more protein in. I'm going to start getting 7-8 hours of sleep at night. What starts to happen? Well, over time, you start to no longer be fat. You start to get into shape. You start to get fit. And you begin to have the fruits of such thing. Okay? So this is a very helpful mental framework for, hey, like what is the actual chain of command? And this is why I tell you, imagine you take this person who has this belief that they have the fat gene and they're big boned and that's just who they are. I could come in and give them the most elaborate nutrition plan, the most elaborate workout plan in the entire world, world-class staff, everything. But if those are the beliefs that they hold, they're not even going to do the plan, right? Let alone get any results from it. So that's why I say you have to first and foremost fix the identity. This is what I mean when I say you don't need another diet. You need to change your identity. Because if you don't have that, the behaviors will never follow it. Okay, so that is the problem here. Now, if we're looking at this through the lens of like a financial provider, right? If your identity is just purely limited to I'm the financial provider for my family, that will always come as the first and foremost priority, which will cause you to push down the chain of command your diets, your workouts, your exercise, your sleep, whatever. Okay, so you have to hold an identity that is I steward all of these areas of my life. It's not just one. If you just place your identity fully in the bucket of financial provision, right, everything else will fall by the wayside. And let's be super real here. The Bible doesn't say to only do that. When you think about what provision actually means, it's not purely financial, right? Some of the things that you can provide your family is, yes, financial, but it's also physical protection. It's spiritual protection. It's emotional stability, right? These are all things that you provide as a man for your family biblically. So it goes way beyond financial. So that shouldn't be your only identity in the first place. Okay. Now, what influences your identity? We have the tree, kind of the chain of commands. I am, I do, I have. What influences your identity? Let's see if Joey knows how to erase this thing on my screen here. Let's see. There we go. You guys get to watch me have a technical learning curve on this new device. Okay. So, what influences identity? Identity. Okay. What is going in here? One thing we have is environment. You get the picture, environments. Okay. If you think back to the tree drawing, a tree is planted somewhere, right? It is in soil. Okay, imagine I go and plant a tree in the desert versus I plant a tree in a rainforest. Which one is going to grow better? Which one is going to produce better fruits? Right? Probably the one that's in the rainforest, right? So your environment is a massive part of this. Now, this can come down to a lot of things. This could literally be your physical environment, like the home you actually live in, the space that you spend your time. This could be what your office culture looks like. This could be your relationship with your wife or your kids. Environment is kind of all of this. It's just everything around you. It's where you're planted. What does that look like? Very tangibly, you need to look around you. And this just sounds very harsh, but it's just the truth. You need to look around you and consider, are the people around you fit? Are the people around you in your environment, are they stewarding their health? Because I'll be super transparent with you. I'm in good shape, but so are all of my friends. And that's not because I go around and say if somebody's fat, I'm not going to be their friend. It's just because it's who I am. Right? It's an identity that I hold, that I steward my body. I am fit. The Lord has provided me a life where I can very easily prioritize my health. And so I look around me, and so are all the other people around me. I don't really have any friends that are overweight or not fit. Most of my friends, in fact, are actually more fit than me, quite frankly. Right? And that's somewhat unintentional, but it's just how the cookie crumbled. Okay? So you need to look around yourself and consider, do the people around me hold an identity that values health, that stewards health? Okay? That's one. Now, we also have inputs. So what are your inputs? Now, technically your inputs could actually be some of the things that you're hearing from the people in your environment, but I'm going to more focus on the things that you can tangibly control. Technically, you can't control what somebody comes up to you and says. So as an input, I'm going to very practically say, what is it that you're consuming on your phone? When you look at your screen time, right? If you're scrolling through Instagram for however long you do that per day, right? Or Facebook or whatever it is that you use, right? Of the content that you're consuming, what is it? Most of the time, most of the guys that I talk to, most of our clients, it's politics, it's sports, it's stuff that doesn't truly serve the mission that you are after, and it certainly doesn't serve the goal that you have of stewarding your health. So you need to consider that. Like, what is it that you're actually listening to, right? For our clients, it's very easy for me to just say, hey, replace, sports and politics on your car ride home from work with one of our education modules on, training, nutrition, mindset, biblical principles, etc. Or come to one of our group calls. Very tangible. You on YouTube here, likely not being a client, it's like, hey, what can I go and seek out that will help me be a better steward of my body, right? Are there people talking about the word and how your fitness is involved in the word? You can go look at my business partner's channel if you need another one to find that, Gabe Pluguez. Go listen to his stuff. Okay? That's another good input. But what other inputs can you seek out that help you steward your health? This can quite literally be finding podcasts, finding YouTube channels, gutting your social media following and filling it with things that actually teach you how to be healthier, right? Very practical. What is it that you're actually consuming? Those are your inputs. If you want to talk about this spiritually, this is a similar idea to when people use music in like a Christian capacity. They'll say, hey, cut out the rap music for the gospel music, right? Or the worship music. It's similar ideology. It's similar train of thought. Different, obviously, but similar in how you should approach inputs. Are these inputs serving this identity that I have to honor the body that God has loaned me? Okay. And that's what you need to fill it with. So remove the ones that aren't doing that, add in ones that will. Okay. Now, limiting beliefs. I'll just put LB, limiting beliefs, okay? So, limiting beliefs can oftentimes get intermingled with identities, right? Because people will attach themselves so heavily to a belief or a limiting thought that it actually becomes something they identify with. So, you kind of have to, there's a little bit of like semantics involved in this, but a limiting belief would be, I have the fat gene. Right? That's actually a limiting belief. Now, you can attach yourself to that identity, like I mentioned earlier, right? You can be like, well, I'm just fat. I am just big boned, right? The I am statements are the identities. I have the fat gene isn't necessarily an identity statement. It's a limiting belief. So it's like, well, I have X, so therefore I can't Y. Those are the statements that are limiting beliefs that you need to address. So think about this practically with yourself. What are the things that you currently hold on to that restrict you from doing what needs to be done to have the fruits that you want to have? Do you believe that you have the fat gene? Do you believe that carbs make you fat? Do you believe that you don't have enough time to work out? What are these beliefs? Right? Because those are influencing your identity that you hold about who you are, which therefore influences your behavior, which therefore influences your fruits and your outcomes. Okay? So, limiting beliefs. What are the things that you believe that aren't factually correct? Lastly, fears. Now, this one's a little harder because sometimes, and this is somewhat cliche depending on what you consume, right? Sometimes fears, it's the idea of, like, you hear this in business, some people are afraid to fail, other people are afraid to succeed, right? So very tangibly, what this could look like for you is maybe you've lost weight before, gained it back, and so you're afraid to start taking your health serious again because you think it's just going to be all for nothing and you're just going to put it all back on. That's a fear of failure, right? A fear of success might be, and I've heard this, that's why I'll use it, this might hit close to home. It's like, hey, what happens if I get fit and my wife doesn't love me anymore? Or my wife becomes jealous of me, or she becomes envious of me because she's struggling with her health too. She's overweight too. And what if I have abs and my wife's still 50 to 100 pounds overweight? It's fear of success. It's like, what happens if I get the result that I'm after? So identify this, right? Figure out what is the maybe fear of failure that you hold, and what is the fear of success that you hold that bleeds into this identity that you have, right? On the topic of provision, it could be something as simple as you're afraid that if you block off 60 minutes a day for your health and your fitness, that you're going to make less money and you won't be able to provide for your family and you're going to be poor, right? This could be a deep-rooted belief that's been there for your whole life, or a deep-rooted fear that's been there for your whole life. So, like, what does this actually look like? What are these fears that you have of failure? What are these fears that you have of success? What are these fears that you have of, just on a practical level, blocking off the time that you need to block off to steward the body that God gave you? Okay? These are all going to contribute to your identity. Okay? Now, lastly, let's get practical here. I don't believe I need this iPad for this part, but I'll erase it regardless, because maybe I will. And next time you see me, I should have a actual Apple Pencil, so it'll be a little bit easier than a finger. Okay, now, getting practical. I use the example of like 60 minutes, because if you remember back to the beginning of the video, when I'm talking about the conversation that spurred the idea for this, right? It was with a client. He's obviously struggling. And again, his big reasoning was he couldn't find the time to pull away from his business, pull away from making money and providing for his family financially. He couldn't find the time to do what we were assigning to him, right? Now, totally fine. Could be a practical barrier. Let's say hypothetically it is a practical barrier. I can guarantee with near certainty that there is 60 minutes in your day that you are completely wasting. And the reason I know why is because there's 60 minutes in my day that I'm wasting, and there's 60 minutes in every single person who's watching this, every single person I've worked with, every single person I know. There's 60 minutes in their day that they are wasting. It's just, how willing are you to find it? How willing are you to make the time to prioritize your health, steward your body, so that you actually survive long enough to see the life that you have provided for your family, okay, materially. Now, what does this look like when you find it? So, with this client, we simply told him to find the 60 minutes, non-negotiable. Treat it as like a sacred time block in your calendar. Absolutely nothing gets booked over this. Nothing. And you have to draw the line in the sand. And if that sounds extreme, fine. But it's reality. And every fit person I know will tell you that their beliefs and their dedication to their health and their fitness is extreme. So you might have to get a little bit more extreme than you have been. You've probably been a little too wishy-washy with it. You have to draw the line in the sand. I will put this 60 minutes in my calendar every single day, and I will prioritize my health. Now, to concise or make the time commitment a little bit more concise for this guy, right? This is what this 60 minutes look like. So look, I am using the iPad. Good. Okay. He was said to spend about 10 to 20 minutes in the Word. Okay? That's the start of that block. He spends it in the Word. Whether that's his personal study, whether that's a devotional that we've given him that he needs to go through, whatever that looks like. Whether that's even actually potentially consuming one of the modules that we have that's essentially like a guided Bible study through the Word. Whatever that looks like. He needs to do that first and foremost. Because again, we're here talking about, financial provision. We're here talking about your health. But first and foremost, your priority should be eternity. And so you should probably prioritize your relationship with Christ above everything else, because everything flows from that. And that's the entire purpose of this video. Where your identity lies. Okay, so get in the Word. That's his first 10 to 20 minutes of that block. Now, the next 10 to 20 minutes is planning his nutrition, his food for the day. So we've obviously prescribed him like a specific calorie goal, a specific protein goal that's based on his height, age, weight, activity levels, etc. We've prescribed that accordingly, and we essentially tasked him with spending that 10 to 20 minutes, literally just being intentional about planning what each meal of the day needs to look like. It's not meal prep. It's just being intentional about, hey, so I know that my son has a little league game tonight, so the only options there are going to be hot dogs and nachos, okay? Even if I want to have hot dogs and nachos, I don't want it to be a situation where I've had breakfast and I've had lunch and I only have 300 calories left, but all I'm posed with is nachos and hot dogs, and now you're toast. You can have it, but you better plan for it, okay? So it's just being intentional about how am I going to actually hit these numbers at each meal today and whatever snacks I need to sprinkle in to do that. If you're not a client watching this, which is probably going to be most of you guys, right? The very simple thing that you can do here to just figure out what does your food daily need to look like, just Google basal metabolic rate or BMR calculator. Plug in your info. It's going to give you a rough estimation of your basal metabolic rate, and just use the actual basal metabolic rate as your calorie ceiling. Okay? Just do that. Don't eat more than that. Eat that number or less. Okay? For protein, just figure out whatever your goal body weight is. So if you're 400 pounds, but you need to be 200 pounds, 200 pounds is your goal body weight. Take your goal body weight and multiply that by 0.8. That will be the grams of protein that you should have every single day. Hit that minimum amount of grams of protein and stay below calories, and you're going to be okay. Okay? Then you track it. Very rough, simple, I don't know you at all on the other side of the camera, way to figure out what are your daily food needs going to be. Spend 10 to 20 minutes planning that out. Now, the third part of this block for him, 10 to 20 minutes, but really just like, remaining time equals burn calories. That's it. Burn as many calories as you can with the time that you have remaining. Now, when you're compressed on time and you need to burn more calories, you usually need to go more intense, right? So if that's if it's in a cardiovascular setting, that could quite literally be not walking for 20 minutes, but sprinting for 20 minutes or running as fast as you can. The other option is adding resistance, of course, so you can increase the intensity or literally the pace of whatever it is that you're doing, or you can add resistance, however you want to do that. Weighted vest, carry some dumbbells, whatever that looks like. Put some stuff in a backpack, whatever it is, right? And you just need to burn as many calories as you can in that remaining time. Now, this is, of course, a very dumbed down way to hit your fitness goals per se, but you also have to remember the context in my coaching lens, and this is a little bit more advanced, but I'll throw it in here for some of you. It's like, through a coaching lens, we have a guy that's 380, 390 pounds. There's much more fruit in me just having him burn as many calories as possible than there is in saying, hey, let's take that time to learn the perfect deadlift form. Do I want him to deadlift? Do I want him to do traditional strength training and resistance training and all of that? Yeah, of course. That'd be great. But he also has 200 pounds to lose. Okay? We just need to focus on thermodynamics right now. And most of you watching this, unless you have very good form that's been approved by a professional, or you have a specific plan that's been tailored to you resistance training wise, again, made by a professional, you should probably also just focus on thermodynamics too. You should just burn as many calories as you can right now. Once you get the baby weight off or the initial weight off and you get down to, say, a 25 BMI where you're a healthy body weight, at that point in time, if you want to get a little bit more nuanced and specific with your training, you can do that, of course, or hire a professional to help you do it along the way. Okay, those are your options. So that's why I say just burn calories. And this was his checklist every single day. So this is what we're doing, right? This is a very easy plan for somebody to go and apply. Now, here's the even fun part of this. It does not have to be all at once if you can't possibly make that happen. So if you just want to ignore my advice earlier of making this a sacred 60-minute block, you can, because you've broken this into 10 to 20-minute increments. Okay? So if you're going to argue with me that you can't find 60 minutes a day to just block off entirely for your health, why don't you find 3 10 to 20-minute blocks per day and just break it up? Okay? Break this up throughout the day and find a way to do it. My advice is, of course, do the sacred time block, do 60 minutes, rip it, get it all done. But if you need to split it up and you just quite literally cannot find a way to make it happen, you can split it. Okay? So this is a good little challenge for you to do. If you want to try it for the next 7 days or 14 days, I guarantee you that if you're doing this, you will see fruits. You will see success in this. You will absolutely watch pounds drop if you're dedicated to it, if you're disciplined with it. I can almost guarantee it. I guess technically I should say I can't guarantee anything because I don't know you and I don't know if you're actually going to take my advice in full. But if you do take my advice in full, it's extremely unlikely for you to not see some sort of success from this. Okay? Now, to close here, the really big main idea today is that, and really what I want you to take from this, as always, I want to use this platform in our business always as an opportunity to point back to Christ, is we have an all-powerful, all-providing God in heaven who can give you both the wealth that you're after and the financial material provision that you want to give for your family. He can give you that, and he can also help you prioritize your body. Okay? One of the final things that I pose to this client is like, do you not think that God is big enough to still provide for you and your family if you block off 60 minutes a day? The same God who rolled the stone away, walked out of the tomb, defeated death on the cross, right? If you don't think that that God can still make sure that you and your family are going to be taken care of financially if you block off 60 minutes a day to take care of your body, right? Then I don't know if we're reading the same Bible, quite frankly. Okay? So we have that. As believers, we have that. And that power is there. That same power, the word even says that same power is within you. The same power that raised Christ from the dead is within you, right? So we have that, right? And you need to put faith in that. And you need to prioritize stewardship, not only in this one domain of financial provision, but in all areas of your life. And quite literally, if you aren't here physically, you can't provide for your family financially anyways. Right? So you need to prioritize this. And in order to do that most effectively, you have to realign your identity into who you are in Christ. Okay? Hope this video helped. If you liked it, feel free to subscribe to the channel, send it to a friend or family member that's going to help, like, comment, subscribe, do all the YouTube stuff. See you in the next one.